one series left for HGC North America. And it's Even in Death versus Tempo Storm.
Sorry, somebody just burped in my ear really loud. Oh, welcome back here to HGC Faced. I am so sorry. That was overwhelming. Good push, whoever that was. And yes, we do have Tempo Storm and Even in Death remaining here. Tempo Storm has secured their section into the playoffs, and Even in Death has secured their section into the Crucible. There is no outcome to change other than maybe Tempo Storm would be a position higher in the playoffs. Yes, that is very, very important, but ultimately it is not going to change the outcome. They will be a part of the ladder system. They're going to be fighting for that third place slot here in North America to be the third representative.
Yeah, and that is the first time all year where Tempo Storm has not auto-qualified for an international event for North America. It just goes to show the difficulties that Tempo Storm has had throughout Part 2 and throughout Phase 2. Let's look at the standings. You can see where they're currently sitting for that ladder step system, or step ladder system for playoffs. Superstar Space Station, Tempo Storm, and Gale Force, as it stands now, those will be the teams most likely in playoffs. As far as number 1 and number 2, we're still crunching some numbers. We'll get back to you soon about that, because that 3-0 victory for Roll20 turns out was pretty impactful for Roll20 and maybe even Team Freedom. We're going to have to see, but we know that 3 through 6, those are the teams that will be fighting it out for the playoffs. Tempo Storm wants to stay above Space Station. They would ideally love to be in the third place position because that team only has to play one series in playoffs.
And we do have to highlight that, again, because Tempo Storm is maybe playing for a bit more here than Even in Death with that positioning, again, into the playoffs. But more than anything, maybe to prove a bit to themselves. They have been struggling as of late, and so having a dominant performance over Even in Death would really, I feel like, benefit the morale. It has to, you know, being a dominant performance against a team you're expected to perform against, and yes, you've been struggling, but if you can still remain consistent against what should be, again, one of the more predictable results, I feel like that has to mean a lot to the roster and feel a bit better going into Week 5 and, again, that playoffs.
Yeah, now before we get fully into that series, the numbers were crunched. And I hope you're watching Roll20 and Team Freedom, because congratulations, you are going to the HGC Finals at BlizzCon with that victory for Roll20 over Gale Force Esports. So we know the 4 teams that will be in playoffs in 2 weekends. It's just about the positioning that they'll be in, but it's great to know 2 teams from North America now who will be representing us at the HGC Finals.
It's absolutely amazing to be able to know those teams. And again, this one, though, it's about that playoff. In Tempo, I don't even know where to begin, honestly, when it comes to what we should be looking at. I think the biggest thing has got to be Cawthon Luck, keeping the eyes on his performance overall. It does feel like that has been, you know, maybe a part of the reason of the struggle as of late for Tempo Storm. Other than that, we know Fury off into the side lane. He's been trying to find his role on that side-soaking lane, the janitor, if you will, as Glorong likes to so cleverly put it.
Yeah, last week we saw some drastic, as I called it, drastic drafting changes for Tempo, so we'll see if that continues, but also for Even in Death and their role swap. Let's get to the series at hand, Tempo Storm versus Even in Death.
Even in Death as a team has shown their strengths throughout HGC, especially when they took a map off of Roll20, who is, in my opinion, powerhouse in NA right now. And we got 3-0'd by Roll20. We didn't even take a map, so Even in Death clearly showed their strength, and we won't be taking them lightly. Even in Death, as far as I know, has recently had a role swap, just like us. I believe Battery moved from tank to flex, and Homicidal is not a tank. So we're going to be focusing on those players, trying to attack their hero pools and whatnot.
I feel like Tempo is a strong team. I even think their playstyle kind of counters ours a bit, because they're really, like, they're heavy pick dependent and like macro focus, but they don't always show up, you know. They're not always playing their best, and I think we're strong enough to beat them. I just think Tempo doesn't have a strong mentality, and they can be broken, especially if they like start losing to a team they're supposed to beat. They get upset, and I definitely think we can take a game off of them and get them on tilt.
Tilt Tempo Storm is not something I've ever heard as a strategy for a team before.
I think it's possible. I mean, when you have as dominant results as this roster has had and not possessing them in modern day, I mean, morale has to be fragile. I don't think there's any world that a competitor mentality is got to be comfortable with where Tempo Storm has kind of descended. And so, though they don't seem maybe like a team that traditionally you would aim for, I think that just based on past expectations in modern day, it has to be fragile in a direction that I don't think Even in Death should avoid going. I think it makes sense that they would try and take that angle over Tempo.
Well, there will be a lot of people cheering for Tempo Storm, a lot of fans of Tempo Storm, and a team that has been a long-standing roster, maybe the longest-standing roster of North America.
It is.
Gladman at the top there still, but we're going to take a look at Even in Death up next. And my favorite, besides Gladman, Unsalted Pirate.
Unsalted Pirate, man. We still, you know, I want to know, we talk about where Salted Pirate is, but what about the Peppered? I mean, there's a lot of other, you know.
Ooh, Peppered Pirate has some great alliteration.
I feel like the Peppered Pirate.
I am approving of that.
How many Peppered Pirates did a pickled pirate pepper pick?
Nailed
Something
it.
like that? I think they were good.
Yeah, you did a great job there.
Well, that's why they paid me to commentate, you know, pretty big deal.
Let's get into the Battleground pool for this game. This best of 5 starts off on Dragonshire, with Infernal Shrines being banned by Tempo Storm. They're going back to that. Even in Death bans Cursed Hollow.
Tempo Storm sticking to their modern day trend by taking us to a small map, but Even in Death has the most, I want to say the most success. Their most successful map is Sky Temple with the team fighting capabilities that they have. But once you get past that, it goes to the small maps. That seems where they seem the most comfortable. Dragonshire probably tier 2 behind that of Tomb, but it is a map that they've got to feel good. So an edge to Tempo, but Even in Death, no strangers here to the Dragonshire laning situation.
Now with both of these teams making adjustments to their roles, Tempo Storm is stabilized on having Fury on the side laner. It's just that he has started to pick up more different heroes, not just playing warriors that fit in the side laning role. And that mainly has to do with Malthael. They've been playing a ton of Malthael. Cothenluck has been switching over less of the Abathur global and more of the Falstad global. And then because Fury plays Malthael, it allows Som to go back to some different picks that he wasn't able to play when he was needing to play the melee assassin roles. Sometimes it is still paired with an Illidan, Malthael Illidan, but he can also play something like his Genji, maybe even a Medivh. So it feels like Fury being able to play Malthael has opened up a lot of different options for Tempo Storm. So we'll see who gets the Malthael, but Tempo Storm for now are just going to maybe ban it.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point that you bring up, that transition of roles for Tempo Storm, because it has always felt like originally it was Psalm started as the melee guy. Then he became kind of this hybrid between the once in a while backliner, once in a while he's going to be the melees. And since the meta shifts and the shot calling, decision making, and some of the role swapping trends we've seen in North America, it does feel like now it is Fury's obligation to make up for what you traditionally would have assumed was, again, that original Psalm role. And that is why I think it's kind of enabling the squad. But again, you got to kind of ask, is that the best direction to go? Because for me, I felt like for a long time it made sense for Psalm to move into that direction. He's gone less and less and less into that avenue. And honestly, the trending of Tempo Storm's results have kind of gone in the same direction. I'm not saying it's a direct correlation, but for me, it just feels like to put a guy onto a flexing role like Psalm and then to make a long-standing warrior onto that off role like that is a huge risk. And I mean, it has shown for Tempo.
Yeah, there is no way around it. This year in Heroes of the Storm has sort of become the year of the side laner. You look at Europe, and the people who are glorified quite a lot are people like Xaylia, Ethereal Angel, Wubby, people who can do a fantastic, outstanding job in that side laner, but still be able to make plays for the team and even participate on the front line. And shifting Fury to that point now for Tempo Storm, it's pretty late. But thankfully, there are a lot of warriors that still fit into that role, but Fury has emerged as the safest of the 3 options for them. Psalm has always been able to sometimes get caught out. And Caterpillar, it was hard for him to shot call from that role too. So for Tempo Storm, it's going to work for Fury. It just takes time for him to catch up.
It does. Yeah, I'm not taking away from Fury nor his capabilities. I am, he's a beyond competent player. It's just more for the trends of the team and what we've seen internationally in terms of roles, what a team should be assuming. Tempo took probably the largest risk of North America here. And maybe part of the reason for the trending of where they land, or maybe not. Maybe this is going to be a new turn for them as he has gotten more weeks to be able to play onto that side role. But Genji, ETC into the Dahaka, Garrosh, and Greymane here for Even in Death, having a lot of pressure up towards that top lane. But Tempo, they've got Psalm with Genji, and he can get a lot of pressure up and towards that Dahaka. And I expect Tempo to play that macro game that you heard Frozen X kind of allude to into the interview. But an Ariel ban is showing up.
Yeah, Even in Death versus Roll20 already played a lot of double support. They've shown that they have a lot of emphasis on the double support, and Tempo Storm doesn't want to deal with that, not allowing Ariel will at least maybe squelch that slightly. But I'm excited to see Psalm's Genji. Psalm was playing out of his mind last week on all of the heroes that he played. A fantastic week for Psalm.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I forgot about that. He actually,
oh man,
he was on another level for Tempo. And I mean, he is normally the playmaker, but he seemed far more consistent last week than maybe normal.
And maybe, again, that is because of what Fury has been doing.
Yeah.
It's narrowing down the heroes that Psalm knows that he has to play, and maybe just the roles that he has to play them in.
Uther is going to be the ban for Even in Death. You know, I even kind of on that same note, too, to talk about the fact that I want to highlight the fact that Fury is even willing to risk going into that direction as a player. How, I mean, I just feel like humbling and also just, I don't know, humble he is as a player to be willing to step down from the main role that he's been fulfilling for so very long.
Years.
And then trying to benefit and enable, you know, other players that are, again, on the roster. Just, he's very much a for the good of the colony type mentality, and that may be something that some of the North American players can struggle in. So just trying to give credit over to Fury where it's due. But Tempo, they still got 2 more picks here, trying to figure out where they want to move into the draft. They hovered over the false tab, but weren't willing to commit to the ban, so maybe that's something they want to pick up for themselves.
I feel like it is a little strange that we saw a Malthael ban from Tempo Storm, but then not focusing so much on the side lane yet, but maybe it was just more that they were trying to get Even in Death to go the Dahaka route. Medivh and Rhaegar shows that we don't really know yet who the solo lane hero for Tempo Storm will be, but we get Medivh back, which means Kothenluck will be the Genji player. Yeah,
we're going to have Kothenluck there onto the Genji. A lot of 4-man control between the Medivh, the Rhaegar with that lightning bond on top of the ETC. A lot of pressure with the 4-man. Expect Genji to be babying that with a couple of kills here and there, but mainly, again, always going towards that top lane, making sure Dahaka has to check himself and not become too big of a problem. So where do we see Even in Death go? Now they know there's a lot of focus there. They have the Garrosh and the Greymane into their fort. They still need themselves a support. And because they were the ones who banned out that Uther and the Ario's been removed, they're pressured pretty deep into that support role. What do they want to go with?
Now Furion is a possibility. They've got the follow-up routes there. And then finally a Zeratul, so fairly melee-centric style of comp. Zeratul will be able to keep up with Genji in the rotations to the top lane and assist Dahaka up in that area. Tempo Storm, final pick. What do you think they're going to get here?
Arthas is like the simple go-to, I feel like, with the Medivh and also enabling out the Genji so they can chase in there. But also, let's think about something else here. Into the Dahaka. Who would synergize with this composition the best that isn't a traditional warrior? Maybe in more of the melee role, although going into a melee makes less sense considering that Zeratul pickup for Even in Death. It makes the most sense to pick just an overly safe laner because Tempo honestly is going to dominate the 4-man here with the Medivh ETC Rhaegar together, as long as it's done proper and Genji, you know, applies effective pressure. So I don't think they have to. I think just picking a safe laner is the smartest choice, and they do that. They go with the Arthas. Again, talked about the synergy that it shows overall, but still, I'm more torn on Even in Death's adjustments with that Malfurion Zeratul that they picked up in the later stages of this draft. I can't tell if I love it or if I'm scared here. It is a adjustment that isn't as questionable as some of the other ones where you're like, oh, that was a big risk. But it is a small one where you're like, you know, if you play it right, I really kind of like it, but it's Even in Death against Tempo Storm. You know, do they have those skills against a team like Tempo?
Well, Ice Block will help Malfurion versus the Genji after 13. You've got Twilight Dream for a lot of melees that Tempo Storm has, and then you still have it as a follow-up for Void Prison 2. So there's a lot of synergy off of having a good Void Prison. It's just whether or not you can execute off of those or get those good Void Prisons. But it is, again, a melee-centric style of composition for Tempo Storm. But I'm excited to see the Void Prison Leyline Seal counterplay that we get quite a lot between a Medivh and a Zeratul.
Yeah, and also what I'm looking for is it's kind of cool because we got Genji on one side and Zeratul on the other, and though Zeratul was the first to have that playstyle, Genji was immediately after towards that. Yes, I can be a part of the 4, but that really isn't my biggest effect on a map like Dragonshire. So now we get this kind of trade-off where we know what the 4 is going to be. Tempo wins that, but can the Zeratul outplay and outtrade Kothenluck there on Genji enough to give Even in Death the upper hand in the laning phase?
Yeah, it's going to be pretty fun to see those rotations, a lot of movement, a lot of mobility, and in the midst of all of that, can Garrosh catch some people and get some executions? We've got Malfurion roots behind that, but it takes a little bit of time to land those roots. It's not like the point-and-click stun of Uther as follow-up. So I guess it comes down to if Even in Death have been able to practice together. It's going to be Lutano back on Garrosh, who's playing Garrosh earlier in the week too for Even in Death.
Yeah, it is weird with the Malfurion. There's a lot of different kind of ways that you could argue on to approach that because of how Malfurion works out. In general, it should be just slightly harder than that of the Uther, but I mean, in practice, it seems to be a little bit of a different story here. I'm excited to see how Even in Death makes it work. I hope we see a lot of synergy with that, because if they fail to be effective with the Garrosh Malfurion synergy, which I'm going to assume is going to be the case, we have a Medivh. He's going to save a lot of those targets.
Oh, yeah.
And they're already struggling in the wave clear for the 4-man. So I am scared for Even in Death this game. Though I still like that Zeratul pick, it feels like it was a bit of a high risk.
Well, it's time for the game. Tempo Storm takes on Even in Death on Dragonshire. Let's get into game 1.
Game 1, and in the blue is Tempo Storm, where we have Rhaegar played by June, Fury on the Arthas, Koth and Lux playing Genji. We've got Psalm on his Medivh, and last is going to be Caterpillar on ETC.
Actually, a little difference there. Fury will be playing ETC, Caterpillar playing Arthas.
Well, you know.
Might change up who's going to be in the lane, but Battery playing Greymane, Lutano playing Garrosh. How on his Malfurion. After that, Dahaka played by Frozen X, and finally Zeratul will be played by Homicidal.
Level 1s are the norm for everybody. Malfurion moving into that Moonburn, a little bit more focus onto the wave clear, but that's something Hao has been comfortable going into for some time. It'll help make up for the pressure that we can assume the ETC, Rhaegar, and Medivh are going to unfold. Fury, he's going to be pulled, flipped, and again, Medivh shield. Nice drag afterwards, though. Fury's the focus, takes the portal right on out. Tempo Storm, thankful they have that Medivh.
Yeah, the Medivh also seeing a lot of members of Even in Death in the minion wave. Going to be able to get a couple of those arcane rifts out to weaken the minion wave. Fury seems to be sticking with the team for now. That may change up after 10 if Fury wants to move into a stage dive, but this does mean that it'll be Caterpillar up in the top lane on Arthas.
Interesting adjustment back on those roles for the members of Tempo Storm. Also not sticking together as heavily as you'd assume, again, with those 3 together. June is being the solo representative in the bottom lane. This is something Tempo Storm has done quite consistently for some time, keeping this Rhaegar down here to be this placeholder, which removes a lot of their wave clear. They are dominant here so far up into this, but this is something that Even in Death really could use to capitalize and punish the earlier stages of this game.
What it does do for Tempo Storm anchoring the way that they are is they have separated Malfurion and Garrosh. Garrosh is hanging out, chilling in the mid, and he can still toss people into maybe some tower shots, but it's Malfurion sticking down in the bottom with the rest of the team.
Even in Death able to control this bottom shrine. I was wowing the fact that that auto attack, I didn't realize that Medivh actually, it's not even the animation starting before him going into Raven form. That auto attack was legitimately a pixel away, and somehow Psalm was still able to get into Raven form. Homicidal's being chased down. He's already burnt first teleport. If the portal is used, they have an opportunity to get this kill. He's got to dodge after the portal, which they're using for more of an escape rather than offensively, so he's going to be just fine.
They may still be able to move in and find another kill, though. Hao is pretty aggressive for it, and it is the safer kill to get, but it is a kill nonetheless. Tempo Storm take first blood.
And with that first blood, double shrine control, and now transition out through mid, it looks like it's going to be a first Dragonite to boot here. That is not good for the members of Even in Death, and Cattle getting on point. Good to, oh wow, the Singularity Spike's not enough. It doesn't blow up in time. Tempo Storm getting their Dragonite on. This is a really impressive early stage for Tempo.
It is.
I thought that they would pull ahead, but I didn't think that it would be as fast as they are doing so far in this game.
Yeah, we'll see how much damage gets done with this early 2-minute, 30-second Dragonite. Tempo Storm focusing on taking down the towers and the gate in mid. And they can try to rotate it down and do the same in the bottom since it is so early of a Dragonite. Oh, this portal. Homicidal definitely going to go down here.
Yeah, it's Homicidal ended up falling now. That is a second kill for Tempo Storm, a Dragonite on top of it. And again, this is very, very scary for Even in Death because their composition with that Zeratul pickup, again, it was a bit high risk, and that's at the earlier stages of the game. You need that Zeratul to be effective, even more so than a Genji, which is why Genji is more of a common pick on a map like Dragonshire than that of the Zeratul. So with a full level advantage pre-10, things are dark here for Even in Death.
This does tend to happen for Even in Death getting behind in the early game. The way that they usually end up making that up is by winning team fights in the mid to late game. But the problem for them here is this isn't Sky Temple, their favorite battleground. This is Dragonshire, where it's a lot more about making the right rotations to pick up Dragon Knights and then skirmishes. The skirmishes so far haven't been working out for them, but they do have Zeratul. Maybe that can change things around, especially once they get to 10.
Yeah, it's going to be very important. But so far, Homicidal seems like he's just been more worried about the minions. He's been he's kind of been the guy on, June's role for the most part. Just kind of, you know, you have a goal and it's obviously doing the damage, but in the end, somebody's got to be the one soaking the minions, and Homicidal's that guy. But Rhaegar is actually being collapsed on here. No way out of here, I don't think. Unless
you have a Medivh. There's the pull, but the portal was already placed. Force of will, but the toss before June can get into the portal. Goes into his Ghost Wolf form, but in the end, brought down by Even in Death, who get their first kill in this game.
Yeah, we're still, we were waiting on the Garrosh level 7 for a minute there. I was wondering if we're going to see something other than Into the Fray, but it's still Into the Fray here for Even in Death. And with that camp picked up on bottom, this is a lot of pressure. They need to capitalize here. Good root there from Frozen X, throwing into it to make sure Fury has to hit it, the drag back. I mean, near flawless CC chain there for Even in Death.
I did throw him into the root, but he still was able to power slide out even after the pull. So Tempo Storm's Fury staying very patient with his abilities. This is still a good push, a great opportunity for Even in Death to catch up in experience. They take out the well, the 2 towers, before finally starting to rotate out. We find Psalm.
Focus, but he's got a portal, so always with that Medivh composition, this Garrosh seems so much less intimidating there. Another drag attempt.
Fury's playing so well, just constantly waiting until he absolutely has to power slide, that time saving so that Psalm could get back. This is a crucial time for Psalm not to die. He's halfway through his Master's Touch stacks, which is great. It's 5 minutes, 20 seconds into the game. He's already sitting at that 15.
Absolutely huge for them. Both shrines controlled by Even in Death for now, but Tempo Storm volunteered up on top to be at a disadvantage as that Night Camp pressuring against them. Fury controls up on bottom. Brush shot coming from Frozen X, and that knockback was a must there as Lutano, you know he was looking for that pull. Homicidal is just being hunted by Psalm, dude. He cannot go anywhere without being tracked down.
Psalm's Medivh seems like it's joining the ranks of the likes of Glaurung, of Dansky in North America. He has been playing a very consistent, awesome Medivh, which for a while we were questioning, even as Medivh started popping up more and more in North America. Could Tempo Storm play it, and could they play it very well? And Psalm has proven that Tempo Storm can indeed be a good Medivh team.
Yeah, they're very, very lethal here with that hero so far. Although with the heroic advantage that Tempo Storm has secured, with this 3-quarter advantage, the fact that they haven't put too much pressure onto the map with this window is a little concerning here. Even in Death now, have Homicidal up towards top. Fury, no Crowd Surfer, so only 1 power slide remaining. There's knockback 1. Although I guess you don't need a Crowd Surfer when you've got a Medivh.
Pocket Medivh shows up for duty. Heroic abilities here for Even in Death. Still, we're waiting to see adaptation or isolation. Is adaptation.
I was hoping we would have gotten the isolation this game rather than seeing the adaptation. I think it's going to be a must if they're going to find a way to kill through that Leyline Seal and the Arthas Ancestral. There's just too many tools for Even in Death to be able to get that kill. So now that Homicidal Zeratul, when the Void goes down, it's about the only time I feel like they're going to be able to get those picks. The Wombo combo just seems unrealistic because Medivh is such a good deterrent towards it. You know, you talked about the trade-offs. It's Zeratul Medivh show. You know, both can kind of counter one another in the Wombo set up here, but I do feel like isolation is something Even in Death are going to wish they had, but we'll see.
Actually, isolation is even just nice if you catch Psalm being too aggressive on the Medivh, giving that extra few seconds of trying to take him out before he can portal and shield his way to freedom. Root connects. The fight rages on in the top lane for Tempo Storm, hoping to control that shrine, but Tempo Storm aren't overly concerned about. They're just keeping ETC there. Now that ETC has Echo Paddle and Stage Dive, he is a far more likely candidate to be in that top lane, especially with the assistance of Psalm, and we have seen the rotation of Cattle to come and join back in with the team.
Brush Talk here for Frozen X. Cattle uses the Icebound Fortitude. He gets a cleanse from June. Void goes down. Stage Dive coming in for Fury. The Howling Blast is a 4-man. Everybody's getting Dragon Bladed up. Cawthon is about to papa.
The Stage Dive Power Slide Dream on every member of Even in Death. You've got the Dragon Blade behind that. Gets 4 kills. Psalm trying to make it a 5th.
It will be.
Burrow. June's not ready to be done with this. Goes back in with Cawthon. Team wipe.
A huge shout out to Cattle there with the use of the Icebound Fortitude, getting the cleanse and then prepping that 4-man Howling Blast. That would not have been the same fight without it. I mean, don't get me wrong, the Stage Dive, everything was clean, but really the thing, securing them all, rooting them in place, was the beginning of the end for Even in Death, and that gets a Dragonite here for Tempo. 13 talents here. They're looking to make stuff happen here on bottom key.
Yeah, they are. They've got the Dragonite in the bottom now, moving in. Toss will hit Fury, but the portal slowed down for a second by the great roots from How. But this is Tempo Storm just trying to assert their dominance in Game 1 over Even in Death. A 3-level lead, just slightly, more like a 2.5.
Portal laid down, so the
Leyline
members
Seal
can
was
retreat.
used.
Cawthon uses the Swift Strike on out. Cattle's going to all in onto this keep. It is inevitably going to die. It'll be at the loss of an Arthas. That is a winning trade for Tempo Storm. And they are comfortable. Medivh could portal him out. They are post 13, so it's very realistic. He survives this, but Homicidal flanking, sharking on the side. He goes in. No Void Prison for 11.
There was the portal. Psalm's going to be pulled back in, but don't worry. The Twilight Dream hits, and the silence will connect, but Psalm still was able to negate a lot of the damage with the Force of Will. Tempo Storm are happy to take this fight. They are the ones with the advantage. Cawthon jumps back in on top of Even in Death. Frozen X running one way. The rest of Even in Death running another 5-man Void Prison will stop the assault.
Tempo Storm now retreating, but my goodness, that was not even close. That last team fight, Tempo Storm is absolutely on a tear. And with that keep that early on, already 2.5 level lead, it really feels like this is it for Even in Death on Dragonshire. Tempo Storm is just, I mean, they're showing the dominance that I was hoping to see here out of them. Again, talking about them maybe needing to prove it a bit to themselves, and so far they are very confidently doing so.
Only losing the one death to Even in Death. Otherwise, a clean game from them. All of their forts still remain, and they are working their way to level 16, far ahead of Even in Death, who just now get their 13 talents.
They're going to try and get this Infade. A fight before 16 is a must for the members of Even in Death. No flip attempt yet. Pull on to Psalm. He's going to be dropped in. Taunt goes down. Halutano's first to drop. Power slide. Oh, wow. 2 members already dead here. Even in Death. Frozen in time. Good night, How. I respect your efforts here. And what do we see Tempo Storm do with this? 3 members dead. Do they want to get a secondary keep?
Power slide catches Zeratul. That's a big staggered death. 30 seconds until Zeratul's back. A fast rotation off to the core with a portal. Tempo Storm hoping to end the game quickly. In 11 minutes, they start working on the core. Arthas sort of slow to show up, but they do have a lot of mercenary pressure behind this.
The only way this gets stopped is if that Void Prison comes up in 12 more seconds. 86% and counting. Cattle drops Army of the Dead. Again, Zeratul in 6 seconds, but it will not matter. Tempo Storm in 11 minutes, 22 seconds. They take game 1 over Even in Death.
3-level lead, 11 kills to 1. Is about what we would have expected from a Tempo Storm versus Even in Death, but nonetheless, gotta be a breath of fresh air for Tempo Storm after the inconsistencies, trying to figure things out. We even were wondering about the roles, but it makes a lot more sense now seeing that Fury goes to the side lane after getting stage dive, having Echo Pedal 2 to hang around with Dahaka.
I was a little concerned when that game started, seeing those heroes swapped, and I
Mm-hmm.
was like, okay, so this is Tempo Storm essentially throwing out all the work that they've been venturing into, maybe why they are where they are, and just going like, well, now when we have locked in the playoffs, we're now going to change things back. So yeah, they did it strategically how they should have, right? Much like a Fall said, we'll wait until 7 to get that lane swap so he has the advantageous laning situation. It was clever to see that out of Tempo. And it's even nicer knowing that they weren't willing to revert back to the original version of Tempo Storm.
What seemed really weird in that game was we were anticipating a lot of focus in trying to assist the top lane heroes for both sides, from Zeratul flanks and then from Genji flanks too. And for the most part, whether it was just that each was trying to respond to the other one and where they went, and that ended up just being that they were hanging out more mid-bot, it was still strange to see that top was not as much of a focus with those ganks.
Yeah, I do think a lot of that came down to the fact that Even in Death didn't necessarily know how to respond to the staggered deaths levels 1 through 5 that we saw out of them. When the Zeratul ended up dying, they were kind of like, what do we do now? And again, with that June placeholder up on bottom, they never really kind of maybe punished the fact that one of the best wave clears to aid that, because we talked about the lethal of the 1-4, or at least the wave clear that it provided, only because wave clear, or because Rhaegar gives double lightning bond, right? He gives 2 shielding AoE clear, so ETC is effective, and he never was together, and Even in Death not once was like, how do we punish this lack of pressure put outward? And I think that's because you talked about it, they split up and they never restored that balance, and that's a very common misplay that we see out of teams, especially at the lower section of North America, is when you lose a hero in the laning phase, how do you minimize your losses and also recover for, again, the experience disadvantage?
And that hero was very detrimental to the kind of composition that Even in Death were wanting to run. Not having Garrosh isn't really a wave clear hero anyway. You can throw out a Groundbreaker, but you're not going to be doing a whole lot there. And then you don't have the threat of pulls. If nothing else, even just the threat maybe keeping people at bay. But I also give that to Tempo Storm slightly, because they were constantly sitting in the bushes with Medivh and with ETC, stopping him enough, and that was scary enough that Even in Death were worried about losing out in the lane experience if they did keep the 4 together. So great job, Tempo Storm, and all fronts there. Before we get into game 2, let's take a look at our global